Welcome back to History Before Sleep, the channel where we unravel the odd, the forgotten, and the faintly absurd corners of history, all at a whisper-soft pace. Tonight we're taking a slow, sleepy stroll through the soot-stained cobblestone streets of a time no one wants to return to, the era of the plague. But don't worry, we'll be doing it through the eyes of one of history's most mysterious and misunderstood figures, the Plague Doctor. With a beaked mask, a walking stick, and a pouch full of rosemary, our cloaked friend shuffled through centuries of chaos and coughing fits. Was he a healer, a helper, or just a hopeful hat-wearer trying not to die? Let's find out, slowly, and without too much drama. If you enjoy winding down with soft-spoken tales of history's strangest jobs and most curious lives, don't forget to subscribe for more sleepy deep dives. And before you fully drift off, feel free to leave a comment below. Where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? Now, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's slip quietly into the strange and oddly relaxing world of the Plague Doctor. Dawn in Florence, 1348. Morning light creeps over the silent city of Florence. In a small room above an abandoned workshop, a weary plague doctor awakens to the pale glow of dawn. He rises slowly from a hard cot, the air cool and still. Outside, the usual bustle of merchants and horses is absent. The streets lie quiet, as if the city is holding its breath. In the distance, a church bell tolls 1, 2, 3, marking the hour in a measured, mournful cadence. Each chime fades into the misty air, unanswered by the usual clatter of daily life. The doctor sits on the edge of his cot and takes a deep breath, catching the faint scent of smoke and herbs that cling to his clothes. He had burned rosemary and juniper branches in a brazier the night before, hoping to cleanse the foul miasma from the room. Now the ashy herbal smell mixes with the morning's dampness. He rubs his eyes and for a moment simply listens. Somewhere a dog barks and there is the distant caw of crows, but otherwise an eerie hush blankets the city. Usually at dawn there would be vendors calling out and carts rolling over cobblestones. Today nothing, only the soft cooing of pigeons perched on a nearby rooftop breaks the silence. He stands and performs a small ritual, sprinkling a bit of rosewater mixed with vinegar on a linen handkerchief. The sharp, sour aroma pricks his nose. Gently, he presses the cloth over his mouth and nose, tying it behind his head. It's a poor man's safeguard, a simple mask of folded linen damp with vinegar and infused with crushed lavender and thyme. It is far from foolproof, but the pleasant herbal scent soothes him and blots out the ever-present stench of sickness. He has heard that good smells might ward off bad air, so each morning he refreshes the aromatic cloth before facing the world. In the corner rests his plague doctor's gear. First he dons a plain but sturdy overcoat, long, dark, and made of waxed canvas. It was once a craftsman's apron, now modified into a crude protective robe. The material is stiff and slightly sticky from repeated applications of wax and oil, meant to seal out the bad air that carries disease. Pulling it around himself, he fastens the toggles. The coat hangs to his ankles, covering the simple woolen tunic and hose he wears underneath. Next he slips on a pair of thick leather gloves, creased and worn. He flexes his fingers. The gloves are a bit large, inherited from a physician who fled the city weeks ago, but they'll do. A wide-brimmed hat of felted black wool goes atop his head, a symbol of his trade, though there are few left to recognize it. By the window, a wooden cane leans against the wall. He picks it up, feeling the smooth polish on the handle. It's about as long as his arm, a useful tool to examine patients from a slight distance, or gently push aside a plagued victim's clothing without direct touch. The doctor gives the tip of the cane a wry look, recalling how just yesterday he used it to prod a sleeping cat, checking it for signs of illness. The annoyed feline had hissed but seemed healthy enough. Satisfied, he tucks a small leather pouch into his coat pocket. Inside are a few medical odds and ends. a packet of dried leeches, a tightly stoppered glass vial of strong camphor, a little jar of ointment made from egg whites and rose oil, and some paper pages to record notes. These are the scant tools of his profession in this grim time. Ready now, he draws back the warped wooden shutters of the window. A soft gray light spills in. From this second-story vantage he surveys the street below. A red X is crudely painted on the door across the way, a sign that the plague has visited that household. He knows the family there. He treated the mother 2 days ago. He blinks and says a silent, quick prayer for her soul, for in his heart he doubts she still lives. Many doors along this lane bear similar marks or simple chalk scrawls left by the night watch, indicating which homes hold the sick or the dead. It's as if the city itself has broken out in spots and sores, each marked house a visible symptom of the epidemic raging within. Drawing the vinegar cloth a little tighter over his nose, the plague doctor takes up a small posy of flowers from his table, a handful of dried rose petals and chamomile tied in a bundle. He tucks it into a loop inside his mask so the fragrance will stay near. With a final breath to steady himself, he opens his door and steps out into the narrow street. A cool mist hugs the ground, swirling around his boots as he walks. The sky above is tinged pink and gold from the rising sun, but down here between the high stone walls of shops and dwellings, the light is weak and filtered. He walks carefully, the echo of his footsteps the only sound. Past a shuttered bakery, its ovens long cold, past the silent fountain in the little square. Someone has tossed bundles of fragrant herbs into the water, and they now float limply. The doctor's senses are keenly attuned. He notices faint wisps of smoke rising from some rooftops, likely families burning damp hay or pine to fumigate their homes. Occasionally he catches a whiff of something more acrid, the lingering odor of burned pitch or sulfur from fires set in the streets days ago to purify the air. Even now, thin tendrils of smoke coil out of an alley, where a pile of old clothes smolders. Garments stripped from corpses and set alight to destroy the contagion. The smoke hangs low in the morning air. Turning a corner, he nearly stumbles over a dark heap on the ground. He stops, heartbeat quickening, and prods it gently with his cane. The form rolls and a gaunt dog lifts its head, baring yellow teeth. It had been gnawing at something, a scrap of meat or perhaps worse. The doctor shoos the dog softly. "Off with you now," he murmurs from behind his mask, his voice muffled and calm. The dog slinks away, disappearing around a bend. Where it had been, he sees a cluster of ragged cloth and realizes with a sinking feeling that it is a bundle of rags wrapped around a small body. A child, lifeless and left in the street. The doctor closes his eyes for a moment, a gentle heaviness pressing on his chest. It is not the first he has found today, and the sun has barely risen. No carts have come yet for the dead, so those who died in the night simply lie where they took their last breaths, waiting for collection. He crouches by the tiny body, whispering a few words of comfort as if the soul could still hear. Carefully, using his gloved hands, he adjusts the soiled rags to cover the child's face, granting a modicum of dignity. He notices the little one clutches a wooden toy, a carved horse, now stained with dirt. The doctor gently removes it, wiping it clean with a corner of his coat. With tenderness, he tucks the toy in the crook of the child's arm. "Sleep now," he says quietly, his words nearly lost in the morning haze. Rising, he makes a mental note to inform the burial detail when next he sees them. As he continues on, the city slowly stirs. Through one shuttered window he hears a muffled sobbing, through another the faint murmur of prayers in Latin. A few souls are still alive inside these homes, fearful and hoping for salvation. The plague doctor walks on, a solitary figure in the empty lane, his cane tapping lightly on the cobbles. He adjusts the mask cloth at his nose. The smell of decay is getting stronger as he nears the poorer quarter, and the flowers and vinegar struggle to mask it. Soon he arrives at a low doorway, where a crude black cross has been smeared on the plaster wall. This is the place he intended to visit first today. Yesterday, at dusk, a boy came running to find him, saying his father had taken ill with the telltale swellings. The doctor had promised to call by morning. True to his word, he knocks gently with the end of his cane. The wooden door creaks open a sliver. In the dim interior, a pair of red-rimmed eyes peeks out. It's the boy, clutching a protective charm of some sort in one hand. "I've come to see your father," the plague doctor says softly. The boy nods and opens the door wider. The doctor steps inside. The one-room dwelling is dark, except for a single candle burning on a stool. The smell here is intense, the rank odor of sweat, vomit and blood mingled with the pungent aroma of onions that have been cut open and placed around the room in a desperate folk remedy to absorb the plague. The doctor's covered nose filters some of it, but even so he steels himself, breathing shallowly. On a straw pallet in the corner lies the boy's father. The man is middle-aged, a shoemaker by trade. The doctor recognizes him. He is very still, but as the doctor approaches, the man's eyes flutter open, glazed with fever. "Doctor," he rasps, voice barely above a whisper. The plague doctor kneels beside him. Even in the feeble candlelight, the signs are clear. A large swelling, a bubo, bulges in the man's groin, hard and tender, the surrounding skin mottled purple. Similar bruise-like spots mar his armpits and neck. The doctor gently lays the back of his gloved hand on the patient's forehead. It's hot and dry, fever, likely quite high. The man's breathing is shallow and rapid, and a sheen of cold sweat covers his brow. These symptoms have progressed frighteningly fast. The boy only fetched him last evening, and already the disease is advanced. Quietly, the doctor asks the boy to bring a cup of water. The child obliges, moving with the cautious, fearful manner of one who has seen too much tragedy for his years. The doctor lifts the man's head slightly, and helps him sip the water. The father's eyes focus weakly on the doctor's masked face. In them flickers a mixture of hope and resignation. He has likely seen others in this state. He knows how it ends. Nonetheless, the plague doctor must do what he can. He reaches into his pouch and pulls out one of the leeches in its little glass tube. The sight of the dark, wriggling creature gives the boy a start, but the doctor speaks calmly, explaining in a low monotone meant to soothe. "I will place this on the swelling, to draw out the bad blood. It's a treatment as old as any bloodletting to balance the humors, to remove the excess of black bile and yellow bile that ancient theory blames for such illness. In truth, it seldom saves anyone, but it's one of the few interventions he knows." With steady hands, he applies the leech to the man's inflamed bubo on the groin. The slimy creature latches on, and after a moment the leech begins to feed, sucking the tainted blood. The patient barely flinches. He is too weak. The plague doctor sits back on his heels, watching the leech do its work. In the silence, the boy inches closer. "Will it help, doctor?" he whispers. The physician turns to the lad, seeing the desperate optimism in his face. He manages a small nod. "It may," he lies gently. "We must try everything we can." His voice is kind but measured, the practiced gentleness of someone who must balance truth and hope. From his pocket he withdraws a little cloth sachet of herbal paste, a traditional poultice made from crushed marigold petals, tree resin and garlic. Earlier that week, an old apothecary woman, one of the few who hadn't fled the city, had given him a jar of this paste, swearing by its efficacy if applied to the buboes. The doctor doesn't have strong faith in it, but he doesn't dismiss it either. What harm could it do? He carefully spreads some of the paste onto a clean scrap of linen, and lays it over the angry swelling. Once the leech has had its fill, and dropped off, the paste smells sharp and medicinal, filling the small room with a garlicky tang. "This poultice will draw out the poison," he murmurs, mostly to reassure the boy, and perhaps himself. The father's breathing catches, and he lets out a low groan. The doctor feels utterly helpless in this moment. He recalls the words of wise physicians he studied in his youth, the writings of Galen and Avicenna, about balancing humors and warding off bad air with aromatics. All of it, all the learning, feels futile against this invisible terror that strikes down rich and poor alike within days. He checks the man's pulse, rapid and thready, fever still climbing. Not much time. Reaching under his mask, the doctor takes a small sniff of his own posy, drawing strength from the sweet scent. Then he speaks softly to the patient, not of medicine now but of practical matters. "Your son is here," he says. The sick man's eyes shift toward the boy with effort. "I will look after him," the doctor adds gently. He has no authority to promise such things absolutely, but in these times, every plague doctor often becomes witness to last wills and testaments. Many a time he has scribbled down a dying parent's final wishes or words for their children. He intends to do the same now. The father's dry, cracked lips move. The doctor leans closer to catch the faint words. The man, with halting breath, asks the boy to step outside for a moment. The child hesitates, then obeys, leaving the dim room into the fresh air. The plague doctor takes out one of his paper sheets and a bit of charcoal. With a low, calming tone, he helps the man dictate his last wishes. It's a simple statement, naming a brother in the countryside to take the boy in, bequeathing his meager tools and cart to a neighbor in exchange for arranging a proper burial. The doctor writes diligently, each stroke careful. He has done this too often, acting as scribe when no notary or priest would come near. He will later add this to the records, or what passes for records in this chaos. There is little guarantee these wishes can be enforced, but having them written might grant a small sense of order amid the chaos. As he finishes writing, the man's voice trails off. A distant look comes into his eyes. The plague doctor recognizes that faraway gaze. The patient is drifting between this world and the next. Gently, he squeezes the man's hand through his glove. "Your son will be safe," he repeats softly. Whether or not he can truly ensure that, he will try. The man gives the slightest nod and a sigh escapes his lips. His eyes slip closed. The doctor stays by his side for several minutes, watching the shallow breathing slow, until it halts. The silence of death fills the room. Outside, a lonely mourning dove calls, its soft coo carrying through the open door. The plague doctor bows his head. Another life lost in this seemingly endless parade of death. He feels a prickling in his own eyes, but he cannot afford tears right now. With great care, he pulls the sheet up over the man's face. There will be no traditional funeral rites. Those ended when the daily death tolls soared beyond counting. Instead of the customary gathering of family and clergy, there will likely just be a corpse collector's cart later. He makes a quick sign of the cross over the body, offering a final blessing in a whisper. Stepping outside, he finds the boy sitting on the stoop, knees drawn to his chest. The child looks up anxiously. The doctor's silence and the slump of his shoulders tell the story. The boy's eyes fill with tears, but he does not wail. By now even young ones know not to make too much noise, as if fearing to disturb death lingering nearby. The doctor places a gentle hand on the boy's thin shoulder. "He is at peace," he says quietly. "He spoke of you. He loves you very much." The boy sniffs and nods, wiping his nose on his sleeve. From a pocket, the plague doctor pulls a small coin, one of his few. He presses it into the boy's hand. "Go to the baker on Via Santa Croce," he instructs softly. "If you show him this, he'll give you some bread. Tell him I sent you." The baker has been baking quietly for the poor, behind closed doors, and the doctor knows a bit of charity now might keep the child from starvation at least for a day. The boy hesitates, then wraps his little fingers around the coin. "Thank you, sir," he whispers. Before leaving, the doctor quickly writes a charcoal mark on the door, a discreet symbol he uses to indicate the presence of a corpse inside, so the burial crews will know to stop here. It's a necessary signal in a time when communication is breaking down. He pats the boy's shoulder one more time, then turns to continue his rounds, the image of the grieving child carved deeply into his heart. Back on the street, the sun has climbed higher, burning off some of the mist. The heat of late spring is beginning to warm the stones, and with it the stench of decay intensifies. The plague doctor knows he must carry on. Many more will need tending, and there are records of the dead he should compile for the city register, though that register grows so fast it's largely symbolic now. He walks on, resolved and calm, trying to maintain a steady meditative pace. In such times, moving deliberately is key. Panic helps no one. As he makes his way through the next alley, he hears a rumbling of wheels from behind. Stepping aside, he sees at last the arrival of a death cart making its morning rounds. It's a rickety wagon drawn by a tired mule. Two figures walk alongside it. One is a man ringing a bell. The dull clang echoes off the buildings. The other calls out softly, almost apologetically, "Bring out your dead, bring out your dead," in a rhythmic chant. There's little energy in his cry. Exhaustion has worn him down. The cart trundles past, and the doctor glimpses several shrouded shapes piled in the back. Arms or legs occasionally protrude from the heap of bodies, jostling limp with each bump in the road. He notices the cartman averting his face, breathing through his mouth to avoid the smell. The plague doctor instinctively lifts his perfumed cloth closer to his nose. As the cart passes the house he marked, he signals to the bell ringer, pointing to the door. The men nod grimly, and move to collect the body within. It strikes the doctor how routine this has become. The most macabre of tasks now performed with the dull efficiency of ordinary labor. The plague doctor continues on, a solitary sentinel in the daylight now. Here and there he encounters other figures hurriedly moving. A few healthy townsfolk carrying bundles as they flee for the countryside, not even stopping to lock their doors. They give the doctor a wide berth, some casting fearful glances at his masked, cloaked form. To many the presence of a plague doctor is an omen of death itself, the last face you see before the end. As the saying goes, he is used to it. A couple of women carrying sacks of belongings cross themselves as they scuttle by, as if warding off evil. The doctor inclines his head politely and lets them pass. He understands their fear. His very outfit, while meant to protect, has become a dreaded sight around town. By midday, he has visited several more homes. At one he tried lancing a bubo on a young man's thigh, releasing a foul discharge while uttering calming words. At another, he left instructions to burn rosemary and to boil drinking water with a bit of vinegar. These are small measures, none guaranteed, but doing nothing at all feels wrong. In each place, he also notes names and conditions. He still keeps a crude tally of the afflicted and the dead, a habit drilled into him by the city council when he was hired. Weeks ago he reported the counts carefully each evening. Now the numbers are so high and bleak that the habit is mostly for his own sense of duty. Still, he writes, 3 dead here, 2 dying there, 1 recovering, a rare hopeful case. Documenting this plague is part of his role, to provide some record for posterity, or for authorities, if any remain to read it. Walking onward, the doctor allows himself a brief respite under the shade of an archway. He is fatigued. The day has grown warm, and beads of sweat trickle down his back beneath the heavy coat. As he pauses, he gazes upward at the sky. A brilliant blue stretches overhead, with a few cottony clouds. It's ironic how beautiful the day is, while below there is such misery. A swallow darts by, chasing an insect, completely oblivious to human woes. The doctor finds a strange comfort in that. Life, in some form, carries on. From here he can see beyond the city walls to the rolling Tuscan countryside. How inviting the green hills look, dotted with villas and cypress trees. How many have already fled out those gates, seeking refuge in those hills. Many of his colleagues, the more learned physicians and wealthy healers, left at the first signs of the pestilence. Of 18 physicians once in the city, he suspects only a handful remain. Many have died, others vanished. He was just an apprentice barber-surgeon before all this, someone with basic medical skills. But when the plague grew dire, he found himself pressed into service as an official plague doctor. In truth, he may not be highly trained, but he's one of the few still willing to go door to door. The city, desperate, hired him on the promise of a generous fee, money he hasn't seen yet, but if he survives, perhaps it will come. He allows himself a small rueful smile at that thought. A dry cough from a nearby doorway brings him back. Across the street, an elderly woman stands on her threshold. She's thin as a rail, wrapped in a threadbare shawl despite the warmth. She's holding something out to him. The plague doctor crosses over, maintaining a bit of distance. "Good day, madam," he says softly. She squints at him, then thrusts forward a small pouch of coins. "Please, sir, for the love of God, take these and give me a cure," she begs in a cracked voice. "My grandson is ill. I can pay." She must think he sells secret remedies, or miracle cures. His heart aches, because he knows money cannot buy what she asks. There is no cure he can confidently offer. Gently, he folds her trembling fingers back over the coins. "Keep your money," he says. "I will see your grandson." The relief in her eyes is palpable. He follows her inside a cramped, tidy room, where a teenager lies shivering. The signs of plague are just beginning on the boy. A slight fever, a swelling just starting under his jaw. This one is early. Perhaps there is a chance. The doctor mixes a simple draught from his satchel, crushed wormwood and mint steeped in watered wine. It may ease the fever a bit. He instructs the grandmother on how to sponge the boy's body with cool water and keep him resting. As he leaves, she thanks him profusely, and he hears her whisper a prayer for him. He accepts her gratitude with a nod, though inside he feels undeserving. He has done so little. Outside, he marks their door subtly, with a chalk scratch, so he can check back tomorrow, and continues on. Now the sun is directly overhead, bathing the deserted market square in harsh light. Heat shimmers off the flagstones. In the center, the fountain's basin is nearly dry. The water has been diverted in some quarters to flush out filth from the gutters in an attempt at cleanliness. The doctor recalls how early on city officials had ordered the streets to be cleaned and prayers to be said, in hopes of stopping the plague. They swept garbage, burned refuse, and held processions. None of it halted the spread for long. Still, cleanliness and prayer are all they know to do. He moves toward the shade of the colonnade, feeling the weight of the day bearing down. It might be time to take a brief rest and eat a little something. Under the arcade, he finds the bench he often uses, a stone ledge where a vine of ivy casts some shade. From a pocket inside his coat, he pulls a small hunk of bread wrapped in cloth. It's yesterday's loaf, hard as rock. Using his clean sleeve, he wipes his gloved hands and lifts his mask just enough to take a bite under it. The bread is stale and chewy, but he's grateful to have it. He chews slowly, gazing out at the empty square, to keep watch even in his break. As he nibbles, his mind drifts. He notices tiny details. A lizard skitters across the hot stones, pausing to bask. A few flies buzz insistently around the edges of the fountain, where some stagnant water remains, likely clinging to something decayed in the drain. The doctor swats one away as it comes too near his face. Pesky flies. There are so many flies this year, feasting on the unfortunate. He has seen them swarm on the faces of the dead left unattended, and it makes his skin crawl beneath his protective layers. If only he could chase away all the flies and rats and corrupt airs, perhaps this plague would end. He shifts and tries to find a lighter thought. In a flash of dark humor, he recalls an old tale about 4 thieves who protected themselves from the plague with a special vinegar. The story goes that during a past pestilence, 4 robbers looted the houses of the dead without falling ill, because they had doused themselves in a concoction of vinegar, infused with sage, rosemary, and cloves. Smiling faintly, the plague doctor pats the inside of his mask, where his vinegar-soaked herb cloth rests. Perhaps I am like those thieves, he muses silently, stealing a few more hours of life by smelling like a salad dressing. It's a subtle joke he keeps to himself. He's no thief, but if vinegar and herbs keep him safe, he'll gladly smell of a pickling jar all day. He finishes the last crumbs of bread and takes a sip from his leather water flask. The water inside is warm and tastes of the vinegar he added for safety, but it quenches his parched throat. Lowering the mask again to cover his face properly, he stands up with resolve. As he does, a sudden faint sound catches his ear. The distant toll of a bell, not the handbell of the death cart, but a church bell again, signaling the noon hour. The day is half gone. Much work remains. With calm determination, the plague doctor steps back out into the sunshine. In his mind, he repeats a quiet mantra with each step: courage and compassion, courage and compassion, letting the rhythm of the words steady his heart for the long afternoon ahead, the long afternoon ahead, the long afternoon ahead, the long afternoon. Late morning in Cairo, 1348. The sun climbs high over Cairo, casting a bright glaze upon the city's white walls and golden domes. It is late morning, and normally the streets of this great metropolis would be teeming with people, merchants bargaining loudly, children darting between stalls, the muezzin's call to prayer mingling with the cries of traders. But today, an unnatural stillness reigns. Down a once busy lane near the spice market, a physician, one might call him a plague doctor, though he wears no beaked mask, makes his way carefully. He is clad in a long robe of light-colored cotton, girded with a simple sash. Over his head is wrapped a turban of white muslin, which also loosely covers his mouth and nose. Normally he would let the fabric drape for comfort in the heat, but now he has pulled it up as a makeshift face cover, and beneath it he has tucked a sprig of fresh mint. The cool scent of mint and a dab of attar of roses on his beard provide a pleasant counter to the foulness he often encounters. In one hand, the physician carries a staff of polished palm wood, not unlike the cane of his European counterparts, used to lean upon or to maintain a respectful distance when needed. In his other hand swings a leather satchel containing small clay bottles of medicines and amulets. The bottles clink softly as he walks. Cairo's air is warm and dry. As the physician moves through the narrow alleys, he notes how deserted they are. Shop fronts are shuttered. The usual enticing smells of baking flatbread and grilling meats are absent. Instead, a faint odor of smoke and decay lingers. He passes by a mosque whose doors are open. Within the courtyard, only a handful of worshippers are present, spaced far apart. He pauses, listening as the last words of the Al-Fajr dawn prayer echo gently off the stone walls. A melodious recitation of Quranic verses flows out, offering solace to whoever might hear. The physician closes his eyes for a brief moment, murmuring Bismillah ar-Rahman an-Rahim, in the name of God the most gracious, the most merciful. These words steady him, reminding him of his faith as he steps back into the quiet street. He approaches a low building whose entrance is marked by a piece of white cloth tied to the doorframe, a signal agreed upon in this neighborhood to indicate someone inside is stricken by illness. With gentle knuckles he knocks. A man's voice from within asks who comes, and the physician replies calmly, "I am the doctor, my brother. I've come to help." The latch lifts and the door swings inward. Inside, the home is modest but orderly, woven mats on the floor, a low table with a pitcher of water, verses of the Quran inscribed on a wall hanging. The man who let him in is middle-aged and anxious. In the corner on a cushioned bench lies an elderly woman, eyes closed. She is breathing rapidly. A younger woman, perhaps the patient's daughter, kneels beside her, bathing her face with a damp cloth. They both look up at the doctor with pleading eyes as he enters. He offers a quiet greeting, "As-salamu alaykum, peace be upon you." They respond, "Wa alaykum as-salam," relief evident in their tone at his arrival. Kneeling by the sick woman, the physician first assesses from a slight distance. Her skin has a grayish pallor, her neck is swollen on one side, and as she stirs, a painful moan escapes her dry lips. The daughter gently informs him that her mother has been feverish for 2 days, with a swelling that appeared just last night. The physician nods and gently asks permission to examine her. With the family's assent, he removes a thin silk scarf covering the woman's neck. There it is, a large tender bubo just below her jaw. He feels a pang in his chest. This is indeed the dreaded plague, or al-waba as some call it in Arabic. Many in Cairo simply call it ta'an, the plague, a word that carries fear and resignation. From his satchel he withdraws a small porcelain jar and a strip of clean linen. The jar contains a paste he prepared at dawn, a blend of ground myrrh, honey and garlic, following a recommendation from an old Coptic remedy book. It is supposed to help draw out toxins. Whether it will truly help he cannot be sure, but it may provide some comfort. Carefully he applies the salve to the swelling. The elderly woman winces slightly but then seems to relax as the cool mixture soothes the inflamed skin. He wraps the area loosely with the linen to keep the poultice in place. The family watches his every move. The man of the house wrings his hands. "Doctor, will she recover?" he asks in a trembling voice. The physician meets his gaze steadily. "I will do all I can, inshallah, God willing," he replies softly. He does not make false promises. Ultimate outcomes are in God's hands. But hearing inshallah brings a small measure of hope to the man, a reminder that they must trust in divine will. The physician takes out a tiny brass incense burner from his bag next. He sprinkles a few grains of frankincense and sandalwood onto a hot coal within it. Almost immediately, a fragrant smoke rises, curling through the room. The sweet woody scent begins to mask the sick room odor. The doctor slowly walks around the small space, swinging the censer gently so the cleansing smoke reaches every corner. "We will chase out the foul air," he says quietly. Perfuming the air is a common practice here, rooted in the belief that pleasant, clean smoke can drive away the evil vapors that spread illness. The family visibly relaxes as the aromatic smoke swirls. It is more than a practical measure, it has a calming, almost spiritual effect. As the smoke does its work, the doctor also murmurs a dua prayer under his breath, asking for healing and mercy. His words are soft and rhythmic, almost like a lullaby interwoven with the tendrils of incense. The daughter, tears glistening in her eyes, mouths "Ameen, Ameen" in agreement with the prayer. Next, the physician measures out a dose of medicine for fever. In one of his clay bottles he has a mixture of ground willow bark and crushed date wine, something akin to an early fever tonic. He mixes a spoonful of it with water from their pitcher. Supporting the elder woman's head, he gently coaxes her to drink. She is weak, but she manages a few sips of the bitter brew. A dribble escapes her lips. Her daughter quickly wipes it away. The doctor whispers encouragingly, praising the patient for her effort as one would soothe a child. "Good, very good. Allah will make it easy, keep drinking." The woman's eyes open briefly, and in them the physician sees gratitude and fear intertwined. With whatever strength she has, she rasps out a question, "Is it the plague?" Her voice is barely audible. Silence falls. Even the granddaughter stops her quiet sobbing to hear the answer. The doctor weighs his words carefully. Honesty and reassurance must be balanced. He takes her hand gently. "It is an illness that has struck many," he says slowly. "We call it taun." Yes. A pause. In that pause, the family members exchange fearful glances. "But," he continues firmly, "remember, the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us that those who endure plague with patience, not fleeing, are granted the rank of martyrs. Your soul is in Allah's care." At this, the old woman's lined face seems to soften slightly. The cultural and spiritual context matters. In Islamic teaching, plague can be seen as a test from God, and those who die from it may be considered martyrs. His reminder is both a comfort and a subtle admonition against despair. The son and granddaughter nod, absorbing this perspective. It's not a cure, but it offers meaning to the suffering. The physician then asks the younger woman quietly if the family has been in contact with others, or if any have left the city. He is gauging how isolated the case is, mindful of the Prophet's guidance to neither enter nor flee a land where plague has struck. The man answers that they have all stayed put, following the hadith. They have not fled, though many neighbors did. He also mentions that a neighbor's family down the street is ill, as well. The doctor notes this mentally, planning to check on them next. He feels a mixture of sorrow and admiration for these people who heed the advice to avoid spreading the disease by not leaving. Even though staying likely sealed their fate, their faith binds them to this place, and he as a physician is similarly bound to serve them. Before leaving, he leaves behind a small amulet, a triangle of paper with a Quranic verse written in ink, sewn into a scrap of cloth. It was prepared by a local imam who gave him a handful to distribute. Keep this by her pillow, he instructs. It holds ayat verses of shifa, healing. In truth, part of him adheres to rational medicine, herbs regimen, observation, but he also respects the power of belief and prayer. In these times, a talisman can provide psychological comfort even if its physical effect is unproven. pmc.ncbi.nlm.neas.gov. And who is he to say? Perhaps God's mercy might indeed come through a blessed verse. The family receives the amulet gratefully. The daughter tucks it carefully under the edge of the pillow and whispers another prayer. The physician instructs them on some care measures. Keep the patient hydrated with watered-down barley water or thin soup if possible. Cool her body with damp cloths to ease the fever and burn more incense or vinegar nearby to keep the air pure. He also gently emphasizes hygiene, though not in modern terms. He advises them to wash their hands frequently after tending to her and to dispose of her phlegm or waste in a pit with lime. An idea he gleaned from Persian medical texts about containing corruption. Stepping back, he gives one last look at the patient. She appears a bit calmer now, possibly from the relief of having a doctor tend to her and the soothing presence of the smoke and prayers. The family's faces are still anxious, but a spark of hope glimmers. They thank him profusely. He responds with humility,
Alhamdulillah.
"Thanks be to God," and reminds them to trust in God's decree, whatever it may be. Emerging from the house into the bright light, the physician carefully unties the white cloth marker from their door. This is a signal that a doctor has attended. It also helps avoid unwanted intrusion by the healthy. He carries the cloth with him, intending to burn it later for safety. Before moving on, he pauses and looks around. The late morning sun bathes the bustling city, or what should be a bustling city. In the distance beyond the rooftops, he can see the tips of the palm trees lining the Nile, their fronds swaying gently in a hot breeze. Normally he would hear the bray of donkeys carrying goods from the river, or the calls of water sellers announcing fresh water from the Nile. But now, those sounds are absent. Instead, an uneasy quiet holds sway. Down the street he notices a small group of men carrying a wooden bier. Atop it, wrapped in a simple shroud, lies a body, likely a victim of the plague being taken to burial. The men move at a brisk pace, murmuring the janazah funeral supplications under their breath, heads lowered. There are no large processions or crowded funerals these days. Burials are swift and sparsely attended to minimize contact. The physician steps aside respectfully, placing a hand on his heart as they pass. He whispers a prayer for the departed. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. We belong to God, and to Him we return. The pallbearers vanish around a corner toward the cemetery, dust trailing their feet. As he continues his rounds, the physician's mind wanders to the paradoxes of this plague. He recalls learned discussions with fellow physicians at the Bimaristan hospital not long ago, where they debated the nature of this illness. Some insisted it was caused by corrupt air rising from the Nile's marshes or from rotting matter, hence the emphasis on perfumes and incense to counter it. Others, more religiously inclined, saw it as a direct test from God, beyond mortal understanding, hence urging repentance and prayer above all. The physician himself holds a balanced view. He prays fervently, yet also applies the practical treatments he knows. In his satchel, side by side with vials of herbal concoctions, are also a string of prayer beads. Both science and faith are his companions in this fight. He recalls an old text by Ibn Sina of Avicenna. He studied as a student, which described fevers and recommended cooling treatments. He also recalls the hadith, advising not to enter or flee a plague-stricken land, essentially an early quarantine principle. How interesting, he muses, that across time and cultures, wise people have devised similar measures. Do not flee, he repeats internally. He has abided by that, staying in Cairo even as some colleagues left for the desert or delta. His place is here. Turning onto a larger street, he comes to the souk market. Normally by late morning this bazaar would be alive with noise, hawkers extolling their wares, camels snorting under burdens of spices and grain, shoppers haggling vigorously. Today many stalls are closed. A few remain open, the ones selling essentials like rice, dates and olive oil, but even those have few customers. People are afraid to gather in crowds. The physician notes with approval that some charcoal braziers have been set up at intervals, burning aromatic wood. Wisps of fragrant smoke drift through the market, an attempted barrier against the plague. He stops to exchange a few words with a vendor he knows, an old spice merchant sitting alone by sacks of cumin and peppercorn. They greet each other sadly and discuss the latest news, how many fell ill in the neighborhood overnight, which notable figures have died, and how the Sultan's court is handling matters. The merchant mentions that prayer vigils have been held daily, people praying on rooftops and in the streets, beseeching God to lift the calamity. The physician nods. He himself participated in one such midnight prayer gathering a week ago, under the stars, 100 voices together reciting verses of protection. It was beautiful and heart-rending. After a brief respite conversing at a safe distance with the spice seller, the physician moves on, sweat beads on his forehead beneath his turban. The sun is unforgiving now. He pulls a small flask from his belt and sips some water, flavored lightly, with a crushed fenugreek seed for strength. He must keep himself well to continue helping others. A phrase from the Quran drifts through his mind. Whoever saves one life, it is as if he saved all mankind. He holds on to that as motivation. Around midday, he arrives at a madrasa, religious school that has been converted into a makeshift clinic for the poor. In the shaded courtyard, several pallets with patients are laid out. An imam and 2 helpers, not trained doctors, but brave souls, are tending to a couple of the very sick, giving water and reciting comforting words. The physician nods in greeting and joins them. Together they spend the next hour in quiet toil, cleaning patients' brows with cool water infused with mint, distributing a simple tonic of lemon and honey to soothe throats, and offering both medical care and gentle prayer. One man on a pallet is clearly dying, his breathing ragged, lips blue. The physician checks his pulse and finds it weak. He leans close and begins to softly recite the Shahada, the Islamic testament of faith, into the man's ear. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. The dying man's eyes flicker. Perhaps he hears. The imam joins in the recitation. The man manages a faint movement of his lips in time with the words. Then with a final shallow breath, he goes still. A hush falls. The helpers bow their heads. The physician closes the man's eyes tenderly and covers his face. At least here, he did not die alone, or without the final prayer. They all feel a solemn peace in fulfilling this duty. The remaining patients, mostly stable for the moment, doze under the influence of herbal sedatives. The physician provided poppy syrup in tiny doses for the worst pain. Seeing that things are under control for now, the physician steps out of the clinic. He needs to continue his rounds beyond this quarter. The imam thanks him for his service. He responds with humble courtesy and encourages them to keep boiling drinking water and burning incense. They will. Back on the street, the physician takes a moment to lean against a cool marble wall in the shade. He's tired, The weight of the day and the heat are taking a toll. He listens. The city around him is so strangely quiet that he can hear the flapping of pigeons' wings from the rooftop above, and the distant clip-clop of a lone donkey's hooves echoing from a far street. Then faintly, something else wailing. A thin, keening cry of grief carries on the breeze. He recognizes it as the sound of women mourning, likely a family lamenting a loss, their sorrow too deep to contain inside, spilling into the public air. It is a haunting sound, rising and falling like a forlorn song. The physician bows his head. He murmurs an ayah from the Quran softly to himself. Verily, with hardship comes ease. Over and over he repeats it, a meditative mantra to fortify his spirit. He remembers hearing stories of how Cairo faced plagues generations ago, and how the people coped. Once he recalls, it was written that charms and talismans from the citadel were widely used, and even great scholars acknowledged the power of such protective magic. Even now, he carries a small talismanic square folded in his pocket, a gift from a local wise woman containing inscriptions against illness. He hasn't the heart to dismiss any possible aid. In truth, everything, from Greek humoral treatments to folk amulets, is being tried by someone, somewhere in the city. The rich retreat to their gardens, and take the rayak, a costly herbal jam, to ward off disease. The poor burn whatever herbs they can find, and clutch prayers in their hands. The physician stands between these worlds, employing what practical skill he has, and leaning on faith for the rest. As he resumes walking, a gust of hot wind blows down the lane, carrying with it a swirl of dust and sand from the nearby desert. He shields his eyes and turns his face away until it passes. The wind seems to whisper in its own language, a dry hiss through the empty bazaar. It reminds him of the impermanence of all things, cities, lives, even plagues, eventually. This too shall pass, he thinks, though not all of us will live to see it. By late morning, the sun is nearly at its zenith. The physician has one more household to visit in this part of the city. It belongs to a respected silk weaver, who had sent word that 2 of his apprentices were sick. Heading there, the doctor navigates through a labyrinth of alleyways lined with latticed balconies. From above, a few curious eyes peek at him, women observing from behind wooden screens. Some call softly, asking for news or advice. Stay in your homes, and keep them clean. Pray, he calls back gently. One older woman tosses down a small packet, wrapped in cloth. The doctor catches it. Inside, he finds a handful of cloves, and a piece of camphor. For you, Hakim, she says. Hakim meaning wise healer. May Allah protect you. He presses the package to his heart in thanks and shouts back, Amin, and you as well. The cloves will be nice to chew on for keeping his throat moist and breath fresh behind the mask. Reaching the silk weaver's door, he finds it already open. The weaver, a portly man, with worry etched on his brow, leads the doctor to a back room where the 2 young apprentices lie on mats. The room smells of dye vats and illness. The youths are maybe 15 or 16, cousins by the look of them. They exhibit mild symptoms for now. Low fever, extreme fatigue, but no large buboes yet, only swollen lymph nodes that could be from any infection. The physician feels a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they have a chance if treated early. He instructs the weaver to let fresh air in, keeping a window open but with a gauze covering soaked in vinegar across it. And he leaves them some herbal pills made of crushed saffron, herb of grace, and dried prunes, a recipe from Andalusian medicine, meant to purge ill humors gently. The boys obediently swallow the pills with watered pomegranate juice. The physician encourages them to rest and keep drinking fluids, and to recite verses if they feel fear. The weaver, deeply grateful, offers a length of fine silk cloth as payment. The physician kindly refuses any payment, reminding him that they are all serving each other in this crisis. Instead, he asks the weaver to donate some of his silk scraps to be used as bandages for the poor at the madrasa clinic. The weaver eagerly agrees. As the physician departs that house, the call to midday prayer dua rings out from minarets across the city. The familiar Allah Akbar, God is greatest, echoes overlapping from mosque to mosque in a holy chorus. In normal times, throngs of the faithful would be walking to mosques now, rugs in hand. Today, he sees only a few solitary figures making their way to the nearest places of worship. Others will pray at home. The plague has changed even the rhythms of devotion. No longer do packed lines of shoulder-to-shoulder prayer seem wise. Many imams have wisely advised people to maintain distance. Still, the sound of the adhan, call to prayer, gives the physician comfort. It is a reminder that despite everything, the cycle of life continues. The sun reaches its peak, and men bow in prayer, as they have for centuries. The plague cannot halt the turning of the heavens, or silence the call to God. He finds himself near the entrance of a small mosque. On impulse, he steps inside the courtyard. Only a handful of men are there, spaced apart under the portico, preparing to pray. The physician moves to the ablution fountain. He removes his gloves and washes his hands thoroughly in the cool water, then his face and forearms, performing the ritual cleansing. The water refreshes him, carrying away not just the grime of the streets, but some of the spiritual weight he carries. With his face still damp, he spreads his mat in a corner, away from others, and bows toward Mecca. The gentle cadence of prayer flows through him. Verses from the Quran, recited softly. The motions of standing, bowing, prostrating, sitting, all done with deliberate, unhurried grace. In prostration, his forehead touches the ground, and he feels a profound sense of surrender. His heart whispers supplications, for the patients he visited, for the families mourning, for strength to continue his work, and for the city of Cairo, to be delivered from this trial. When he concludes with salam, peace greeting to either side, he feels a tear upon his cheek, not of despair, but of humble hope and release. The other men cast sympathetic glances. Tears in prayer these days are common among all. As he rises, one of the older worshippers approaches and presses something into his hand, a small pouch of blessed dates from a recent charity donation. The man insists he take them to keep his energy up. The physician thanks him and tucks the pouch in his satchel. A quiet camaraderie passes between them. No words need be exchanged to know they are united in faith and resolve. Revitalized by prayer and a moment of peace, the plague doctor of Cairo steps back out. The sun overhead is strong, but he straightens his back and carries on, ready to face the next street, the next home in need of his calming presence and healing knowledge. He has many miles to go before evening. As he walks the noontime streets shimmer in the heat, and he moves through them like a steady current, his white turban and robe a beacon of care in a stricken city. Inshallah, he thinks, God willing, his efforts will save at least some this day. If nothing else, he will deliver comfort, and that too is a form of healing. With that thought, he disappears around a sunlit corner, on to his next call, as the call to prayer fades and the quiet, stoic struggle of Cairo's plague day continues. Plague day continues. Plague day continues. Plague day Afternoon in London, 1665. The sun hangs high and unyielding in the summer sky over London, bathing the city in a harsh, bright light. It is the summer of 1665, and the afternoon heat bears down on empty streets and shuttered shops. A lone plague doctor makes his way through the broad thoroughfare of Fleet Street, where only months ago carriages and pedestrians would have bustled incessantly. Now the only footsteps echoing off the tavern walls are his own, measured and hollow. He is an unsettling sight in this deserted cityscape. tall and draped in a long waxed coat of brown leather, its surface shiny in the sun as if slick with oil. The coat falls to his ankles, and every inch of his body is covered, from the boots on his feet to the broad-brimmed leather hat atop his head. His face is entirely hidden behind a grotesque mask. Two round glass lenses glint where his eyes should be, and projecting from where his mouth and nose are is a curved beak-like cone about half a foot long. To a passerby, if there were any, he looks like a giant ominous bird strolling on human legs. In his gloved hand he carries a white stick about as tall as his waist, a walking cane, yes, but also his tool to poke and prod without direct contact. Dust motes dance around him in the shafts of sunlight. He moves deliberately, almost dreamily, with a slow stride that belies the urgency of the plague all around. The doctor adjusts the mask slightly. Inside its beak, tucked in compartments, are aromatic substances. All morning he replenished them, stuffing the cavity with dry rose petals, rosemary and pungent camphor soaked into a sponge. Now, as he inhales, he smells mostly the heady sweetness of lavender and peppermint. It is cloying, but he prefers that to the alternative, the miasma of death and rot that permeates London's alleys. He believes, as do many, that these good smells will ward off the poisonous bad air carrying the plague. Within the beak the air is humid from his breath and herbs. Sweat trickles down his cheeks beneath the mask. It is stifling, but he dares not remove any part of his armor in these streets. As he walks, he surveys the once familiar city turned alien. Windows are boarded up, marked with red crosses and the plea, "Lord, have mercy upon us." Here and there crumpled shapes lie at doorsteps, corpses hastily wrapped in blankets awaiting collection. Flies buzz around them in lazy swarms, the only truly lively presence in this afternoon scene. The doctor swishes his cane lightly to scatter a cloud of flies as he passes a particularly foul heap of refuse left rotting in the gutter. The city's normal refuse collectors, the rakers, are overwhelmed or gone. Filth piles up, adding to the miasma. To combat it, the city authorities have ordered that giant bonfires be lit in the streets. Indeed, at a nearby intersection, a smoldering fire crackles, tended by two men with cloths around their faces. A heap of wood and coal burns fitfully, producing thick white smoke. The intention is to purify the air with heat and smoke. The plague doctor pauses a moment at the edge of the bonfire, feeling a blast of heat on his coated legs. He knows some say this is pointless, but others insist it helps. He chooses to believe it might, if only to keep morale. Wisps of smoke curl around him, swirling the hem of his coat. Within his mask, he mostly smells herbs, but a faint hint of wood smoke seeps in, mixing with the lavender. One of the fire tenders recognizes him, not by face but by the distinctive outfit. The man raises a hand in greeting or perhaps warning. "Careful, Master Doctor, we're about to add more brimstone," he calls hoarsely. The doctor nods and steps away just as the men toss a scoop of something sulphurous onto the flames. With a sputter, the fire sends up a pungent sulfuric cloud. The doctor's eyes blink behind his goggles, but he's grateful for the mask. It filters out the worst of that acrid stench. He moves on, cane tapping, down this stretch of Fleet Street. A printing shop stands with doors flung open. A sign reading, "Closed by order," hangs crookedly. The doctor notices a stack of broadsheets scattered on the step. One flutters in the breeze, its title visible, "Lord have mercy, Weekly Bill of Mortality." Curious, he pins it with his cane and bends to see. It's one of those mortality bills that list the weekly death tolls by parish, something Londoners anxiously scan each week. He doesn't need to pick it up to know the numbers are dire. Over 7,000 deaths per week in September, he recalls, but likely even more go uncounted. A heavy sigh escapes him, fogging the glass eyepieces of his mask for a moment. He thinks of the line of text he often sees on these bills. Plague likely much underreported. Even the clerks concede they cannot keep up with the true count. He continues walking, past the Church of St. Dunstan's, The iron gate to the churchyard is chained shut. Through the bars he glimpses fresh mounds of earth, graves dug hastily. Some are proper graves with wooden markers, others are mass burial pits now covered over. He can smell the turned soil and a faint odor of decay from within. Normally at this hour he would hear the peal of the church bell marking afternoon prayers, but now the bells are mostly silent, except to mark a death. The absence of their ring is unsettling. It's as if time stands still in a morbid hush. A sudden jolting sound breaks the silence, the clatter of a cart wheel and the whinny of a horse. The plague doctor turns his head to see a death cart approaching from a side lane. "Bring out your dead." The driver's voice rings out, as monotone and weary as a man can manage. Clop clop, the hooves approach. The plague doctor steps aside to let the wagon pass. On it lie several bodies wrapped in sheets or old cloth, sprinkled with quicklime. A thin trickle of dark fluid drips from the back of the cart, leaving a trail on the cobbles, bodily fluids from the dead, unfortunately. The doctor makes a mental note to avoid that slick trail for his own safety. He exchanges a nod with the cart driver. They know each other by sight. The doctor often coordinates with these burial men to direct them to houses in need of corpse removal. As the cart passes by, a handbell jingles from the second man walking behind it. Ding ding, a token warning to any who might not see them coming. A muffled voice from within a nearby house cries, "Have mercy. Take him, he's here." The cart halts. The men load up another body from a doorstep. The plague doctor assists momentarily, using his cane to lift the edge of a tarp so the men can slide the body on. Even with his mask's herbs, the odor that wafts out, a mix of putrefaction and carbolic acid someone poured on the body, makes him gag lightly. He recites under his breath a fragment of a psalm, something he picked up from a devout colleague. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." The words steady him as they finish and move on. Wiping his cane tip on a clean patch of ground, the doctor veers down a narrower lane. He has specific patients to see, not that he expects to cure anyone, but it's his duty to check on the afflicted, to offer what comfort or quack remedy he can, and to document the spread. He also does the grim work of inspecting houses to ensure those quarantined inside do not break out. In some places the city militia have stationed watchmen with halberds outside, locked plague houses, enforcing a strict 40-day quarantine. He passes one such house. A red cross and "Lord have mercy on us" are painted on the door. A watchman leans against the wall nearby, a pike in hand, looking bored and forlorn. Inside faint cries can be heard, the people locked in pleading to be let out, or maybe just wailing in despair. The plague doctor approaches. "How fares it in there?" he asks the watchman, voice slightly muffled. The man recognizes him and shrugs. "Not good, sir. The mother died last night. 2 young ones still alive but poorly. They beg for bread and water." He sounds troubled. The doctor reaches into the leather pouch slung at his side. He carries some ship's biscuits, very hard but long-lasting crackers for his own ration, but he'll spare a couple. "Here," he says, handing them to the watchman. "Soak these in water if you can, and pass them through a window to the children." The watchman nods gratefully, and sets about to slip the food through the slightly ajar shutter while the doctor waits. It's against some regulations, perhaps, but basic humanity overrides. As he stands there, the doctor hears a small voice from inside say, "Thank you, sir." It nearly breaks his heart. Imprisoned by plague, those children have as much right to care as anyone. He notes down the address in a small notebook. If he can, he'll send someone from the parish charity with proper provisions, though those volunteers are scarce now. Before leaving, he offers a word to the watchman: "Keep courage, and keep your distance if you open that shutter, mind you." The man grimly taps his halberd in acknowledgement. Moving along, the doctor arrives at a house he intended to visit. It belongs to a tailor named Joseph, whom he saw 3 days ago. Joseph was symptomatic but still alive then, and the doctor had bled him slightly and given him a plague water tincture. a brew of fermented molasses and herbs which may or may not help. Now he stands before the door and knocks with his cane. Joseph, it's the doctor. Are you there? No response. He tries the latch. Surprisingly, it yields. The door creaks open. A waft of foul air hits him. He presses his mask closer. Inside, the single-room dwelling is dim. Light filters through cracks in the boarded window. Joseph, he calls again. At first, silence. Then he hears a faint groan from the corner. The doctor steps closer. Joseph the tailor is sprawled on his back on the floor by his work table. His shirt is soaked in sweat and he's barely conscious. The doctor kneels down, careful not to touch the man directly. Joseph's face is pallid, eyes sunken, lips cracked. A large bubo bulges on his right thigh, where his breeches are ripped open. Likely it burst, as there's an ooze of blackish fluid. The stench confirms it. The doctor's stomach tightens. He knows this case is likely beyond saving. Joseph's breathing is rattled, the infamous death rattle in his throat. Still, the plague doctor does what he can. He takes from his pocket a phial of the ryak, a treasured expensive concoction with countless ingredients and a bit of opium. The ryak is no proven cure, but people swear by it, and at least the opium will dull the man's pain. Lifting Joseph's head gently with a cloth separating his glove from the patient's skin, he trickles a few drops between the man's cracked lips. Joseph coughs weakly but swallows some. The doctor also uses clean rags from the tailor's own stock. There's a bolt of linen nearby to wrap the leaking bubo. He works swiftly but calmly, whispering reassurances. Easy now, old friend. I've got you. God willing, you'll rest easier soon. Joseph's eyes flicker open at the familiar voice. He tries to speak. Doc, ta, comes out in a dry whisper. Shat, the doctor replies. He notes the man's pulse, faint and fast. There's little time. Is it day or night? Joseph rasps, disoriented. Afternoon. The sun is shining, answers the doctor softly, checking the man's forehead burning hot. Joseph's gaze wanders to the half-finished coat on the work table above him, and a tear slips from the corner of his eye. Perhaps he realizes he'll never complete it, never return to normal life. The doctor finds himself offering words he often uses now. Be not afraid. You fought bravely. Let me say a prayer with you. Though he's not clergy, he has taken to reciting simple prayers for the dying when priests are unavailable. In a low voice, he begins the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven. Joseph's lips move feebly in tandem. As they reach deliver us from evil, Joseph's body shudders, his breath catches. The plague doctor gently supports him. With one last strained exhale, Joseph falls still. The doctor bows his head, finishing the prayer in a whisper. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. He makes the sign of the cross over the man's now peaceful face. For a moment, the doctor remains kneeling, offering a brief silent meditation for this soul released from suffering. This part of the job never gets easier. He closes Joseph's eyes and moves him onto a straw mat as reverently as possible. The body is contagious, he knows. He must be cautious. He goes to the door and calls down the street. By providence, the death cart he saw earlier is not far off, turning around for another route. He waves them over. When the cartmen arrive at the door, they recognize Joseph. Likely they had an appointment to fetch him soon. With the plague doctor's assistance, using his cane to help lift from beneath the mat, they transfer Joseph's corpse to the cart. The doctor ensures they sprinkle quicklime over it to reduce the smell and infection risk. God rest his soul, the doctor says to the cartmen. They agree quietly. One mentions, this was the third from this lane today. The doctor only nods. He dare not ask who else. Too many to keep track of individually now. As the cart creaks off, he returns to Joseph's house briefly. He rummages through a small chest and finds what he seeks, a paper with a name and address. Joseph's sister in the next parish over. She's healthy last he heard. He writes a quick note to notify her of her brother's passing. No easy way to break it. but he writes with compassion and resolves to drop it at the parish church for delivery. One of his tasks as plague doctor is also relaying messages and wills when he can. He notices Joseph's work table again, the half-finished coat, and beside it a pile of coins. Payment maybe. The doctor takes a single shilling coin from the pile and pockets it, not for himself, but to put toward the burial fee, since the poor man has no one else to see to it. The rest he will leave for the sister if she claims it. Such mundane details occupy his mind to keep grief at bay. Stepping out and pulling the door shut, he scratches with a piece of chalk on the wood, a small cross, and JDRIP. A discreet mark for anyone who checks that the resident has died and been removed. The watchmen will eventually update their lists. The plague doctor trudges on. The afternoon grows hotter and the air heavy. The stench of London in plague time is overpowering even with his aromatic defenses. A mix of uncollected garbage, human excrement, no one is cleaning the streets well, and the pervasive sweet-sour odor of decaying flesh masked by quicklime and pitch. He remembers that early in the epidemic, thousands of dogs and cats were killed by order of the mayor, thinking they spread the plague. Now the unintended result, rats run freely, and no cats to hunt them. As if on cue, a rat scurries across his path, bold as anything. The doctor can't help but give a dry chuckle. Hidden inside the mask it comes out as a hollow puff. "Good day to you too," he mutters wryly to the rat. "Are you the true physician here, carrying our punishment?" He's heard some suggest the disease comes from rats and their fleas, but most still credit bad air or divine wrath. He doesn't know what to believe, except that the mass killing of cats was probably a mistake. The rat pauses to sniff the air, then disappears into a drain. The doctor shakes his head and continues. Turning onto a small street of timber houses, leaning toward each other, he sees a figure up ahead. A young woman stands in the middle of the street, sobbing and holding a bundle. As he nears, he sees the bundle is a wrapped infant, unmoving. The woman, barely more than a girl, looks at him with wild red-rimmed eyes. "Please, sir, help him," she cries, thrusting the tiny form forward. The doctor's heart lurches. Gently, he peels back the cloth. The infant's face is waxen, eyes closed. One small purple spot mars its cheek. He places a gloved hand lightly on its chest. No movement. The baby has passed, likely hours ago. The mother hasn't accepted it yet. He speaks gently, as softly as his gruff masked voice allows. "He's at peace, my dear. There is no pain for him now." The mother wails, clutching the baby to her chest. The doctor feels tears prick his own eyes behind the mask. So much loss, too much for fragile hearts. He places a hand on her shoulder, a rare direct touch, but she is beyond fear of contagion now. "I'm sorry," he murmurs. She looks at him, despair turning to something like anger. Why would God take him? He was just a babe," she screams. The doctor has no answer. "I cannot say, but have faith. His soul is innocent. Perhaps God spared him a harder life." Hollow words maybe, but what else can he offer? The woman sinks to her knees in the road, rocking the infant. Just then, another woman, a neighbor, emerges and hurries to her, kneeling and putting arms around the grieving mother. "Come, love, come away." The neighbor coaxes, prying gently. The plague doctor nods to the neighbor gratefully. He knows he must move on to his next tasks. He cannot linger in every tragedy, or he'd collapse under the weight. The neighbor, an older sturdy dame, with tears in her own eyes, meets his gaze and whispers, "I'll take care of her, sir." He leaves them, hearing the younger woman's sobs fade behind him, feeling utterly helpless. Walking now through a more open area, he comes upon familiar sights. The great bulk of St. Paul's Cathedral a few blocks off, its towers rising above the city roofs. Normally, that would be a bustling area, but he sees only a few plumes of smoke from bonfires and not a soul walking. The silence is eerie. Overhead, carrion crows circle, drawn by the scent of death. Their calls echo, nature's own funeral choir. The doctor stops to rest in the shade of a wall. His legs ache and head swims from heat. The heavy clothing doesn't help. He dares not remove the mask, but he tilts his hat back a bit to let air onto his brow. Wiping sweat, he decides it's time to smoke his pipe. Oddly, smoking tobacco has become one of the recommended preventatives. Some claim no tobacconist has died of plague so far. He isn't sure if that's true, but he likes tobacco, and the ritual calms him. Taking out a small clay pipe and a pouch, he packs some tobacco and lights it with a coal from a nearby brazier. He then lifts the beak of his mask, just enough to stick the pipe stem under it, and draws in a deep lungful of smoke. The tobacco burns strong and acrid. He exhales slowly. The smoke seeps out around the rim of his mask, creating a hazy aura around his face. Immediately, the world feels a tiny bit more bearable. The dizziness recedes, replaced by a nicotine steadiness. He recalls a saying he overheard: "Smoke your nose and fumigate your clothes, 'twill keep out the plague." Many Londoners indeed carry posies or smoke to ward the disease. He finds it darkly humorous that he, looking like a fearsome bird, now literally smokes like a dragon. The humor is subtle, but it keeps him sane. As he smokes, he looks out at the empty street and imagines it bustling again. He hears phantom voices of vendors, maybe even the laugh of a child chasing a hoop. The ordinary life sounds that have vanished. Repetitive thoughts loop in his mind. This will end, it must end. Perhaps by winter the frost will kill the pestilence. Over and over, like a mantra, as he puffs the pipe, a distant rumble breaks his reverie. Thunder. He glances at the sky, earlier clear. Now he sees some clouds gathering. A summer thunderstorm perhaps approaches. He hopes for rain. A good rain might wash the streets somewhat and break the oppressive heat. Finishing his pipe, he taps out the ash, replaces his mask securely, and moves on to his final duty of the day. The last stop is a pest house, on the outskirts, a sort of infirmary, where some plague victims are taken. It's a bit of a walk, across Fleet Ditch, and towards the fields. As he goes, he notes the sky, dimming slightly, clouds turning the sunlight milky. The smell of ozone hints at a coming storm. Perhaps it will hold off until evening. Approaching the pest house, a low sprawling building with many small cells, he is greeted by a fellow physician, not dressed as extremely as him, but with apron, mask cloth, and gloves. They converse about the patients. There are a dozen here, mostly the poorest, who had nowhere else to go. The plague doctor checks on a few. One old man delirious with fever. A young maid astonishingly recovering. Her swelling's drained, and she's sitting up sipping broth, a rare triumph. He gently encourages the recovering girl. "Very good, dear. Keep your strength up. You're a brave one." She manages a weak smile. Such moments are rays of hope piercing the gloom. In one corner, a man thrashes in bed, half mad with the infection reaching his brain. The doctor helps the assistant tie him gently to restrain self-harm, and they burn more juniper and pine in a pan to ease the stench. Through all this, the two doctors speak in low voices, sharing tidbits of news. How Cambridge University has been suspended. The great Sir Isaac Newton himself reportedly fled to the countryside. How the King and court left London months ago for Oxford, leaving the Lord Mayor to manage. There is resentment in his colleague's tone about the rich fleeing, but also understanding. Everyone who can leave has left. Only the likes of them, the plague doctors and nurses and watchmen, remain by necessity or duty. They also share any new treatments they've heard of. One rumor, applying a live chicken's rump to the buboes, the so-called Vickery method. They chuckle at that absurd cure-all but acknowledge some try it. Another idea, powdered unicorn horn, obviously a costly fantasy for nobility, not for common folk. The plague doctor shakes his head at the folly, but doesn't judge too harshly. In desperation, people try anything, even ground emeralds or snake concoctions. He's stuck to simpler measures, though he did once dab a sponge of vinegar inside his mask, basically carrying 4 thieves' vinegar with him as legend suggests. As they step back outside, the 2 physicians notice the wind picking up. A low roll of thunder growls from the south. The sky has grown slightly darker, though it's only late afternoon. "Will you stay in tonight?" asks his colleague. The plague doctor sighs. "I think I shall head home before the rain. I've done what I can for today." They exchange a tired but cordial farewell, each blessing the other to stay safe. Walking back towards his own lodgings, the plague doctor realizes how exhausted he is. His feet drag a bit, the cumulative weight of the day pressing down. The streets blur past in a muted haze. He sees scenes: a man boarding up his shop, 2 gaunt women dragging a body on a makeshift sled, a cat, where did that cat come from, slinking along a rooftop. Perhaps a few cats survived the cull. Ironically, they might be immune. The doctor silently cheers the cat on. "Catch those rats, little hunter." Strange, how in catastrophe, one finds oneself rooting for even a lone cat, as a symbol of resistance. A few fat raindrops splat on the dusty ground. The smell of petrichor rain on dry earth rises, not entirely unpleasant. He quickens his pace. By the time he reaches his quarters, a small rented room near an apothecary, the heavens open. Rain pours down, drumming on the roof and street. He steps under the eave, watching it sheet off the tiles. It washes along the gutters in brown rivulets. He hopes it cleans away some contagion, though he knows the plague nests deeper than surface grime. Safely indoors, he removes his outer equipment. First, the beaked mask, unlacing it and pulling it off. He wipes the inside with a cloth soaked in vinegar. His face beneath is pale, deeply lined and marked with the imprint of the mask's edges. He washes his hands thoroughly in a basin of water and vinegar. He's learned to be meticulous, quarantining himself in practice. Off comes the heavy coat next, hung on a peg. Underneath, his shirt is soaked with sweat. He changes into a clean linen shirt. The gloves and hat he wipes down as well. He places a few fleas he found on his sleeve into the candle flame. A grim habit he's acquired, killing any such pests. Not that he's sure they cause plague, but he's had quite enough of them biting him. Finally free of his garb, he slumps into a wooden chair by the window. The rain falls beyond, filling the air with a rhythmic hush. For a moment, the plague doctor simply sits, eyes closed, letting the patter calm his mind. Repetitive sounds of rain on roofs and puddles create a meditative backdrop. It's as if the city itself is weeping softly, washing its wounds. He reaches for a quill and his ledger. Time to record the day's observations. By a flickering candle, he writes in neat, looping script. The date, the weather hot, storm late, and notes: visited Fleet Street and Ludgate areas. Many new cases. Joseph D. Taylor, deceased, delivered to brothers of parish for burial. Mary K. Child, in good condition, recovering. Distributed lozenges and small beer at pest house. Moderate improvement in 2 patients. Increasing putrefaction in streets. City employed bonfires and tobacco measures continuing. Advised quarantines maintained. It's a dry account, but he includes a line about the orphaned children and to notify parish aid. These notes he will send to the College of Physicians if they ever compile a comprehensive report, or to the city aldermen who want updates. Perhaps one day these records will help others understand and prevent future plagues. As he finishes, he finds his hand trembling slightly. The events of the day swirl in his memory. Images of the grieving mother, the dead infant, Joseph's final breaths, the crying children behind a locked door. He sets the quill down. Enough. He needs rest, mental and physical. Outside, the light is starting to fade. Between the storm clouds and dusk, London will soon be dark. He lights a small lamp and closes the shutters. From the hearth, he takes a scoop of fragrant herbs, lavender, thyme, and tosses them on the low fire. his own fumigation to keep his quarters clean of the plague miasma. A gentle perfumed smoke wafts through the room. He unrolls his sleeping mat in the corner. Before lying down, he kneels and says a quiet prayer, commending all the souls from today to God's mercy, and asking strength for tomorrow. The words are simple and repetitive, almost like a lullaby to himself. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. He repeats this, eyes closed, as the herb smoke curls and the rain patters, until the repetition itself soothes his tired mind. Finally, he lies down on the straw-filled mattress. Through a crack in the shutter, he sees a last glimmer of daylight. Or perhaps that's the first gas lamp being lit by a watchman in the street. Thunder rumbles again, softer now, as the storm moves east. The plague doctor pulls a light sheet over himself. In this moment, he allows hope to enter his weary heart. Hope that come tomorrow, fewer will suffer, that the rain and the measures might diminish the contagion. He even dares hope that by morning, perhaps the angel of death will have passed over, and the city might stir back to life. These hopeful thoughts are his final companions, as he drifts into an uneasy, but much-needed sleep. The city outside, growing dark and damp, awaiting whatever the next dawn brings. The next dawn brings. The next dawn brings. The next dawn brings. Evening, in Bombay, 1897. The sun sinks low over the port city of Bombay, Mumbai, on a sweltering summer evening in 1897. Dusky orange light filters through the humid air, casting long shadows down the narrow lanes of the Bendi Bazaar. It has been a brutally hot day, and even as night approaches, the heat radiates from the colonial brick buildings and crowded Chawls tenements. In these waning hours of daylight, a plague doctor navigates through the congested bylanes, his footfalls echoing alongside the distant din of the city's harbor. This plague doctor appears quite different from those of centuries past in Europe, yet his purpose is the same. He is an Indian man in his early 40s, a local physician trained in Western medicine under the British Raj. Instead of archaic robes, he wears a simple white cotton coat over his clothes. Though he has improvised protective measures, he has wrapped a length of thin muslin around his nose and mouth, forming a loose mask, and wears spectacles to shield his eyes. A pith helmet on his head helps stave off both sun and potential droplets of infection. He carries a canvas satchel slung across his shoulder, bulging with vials of carbolic disinfectant, a bottle of quinine tonic, some clean bandages, and a stethoscope. In his hand he holds a sturdy walking stick, useful for balance on uneven ground and for gently nudging doors open without touching them. The atmosphere in Bombay is a mix of frantic energy and dread. As the doctor passes through a bizarre street, he sees smoke rising in the distance, likely from one of the cleansing fires set by the authorities to consume refuse and possibly infected materials. The smell of phenol carbolic acid hangs in the air too, a sharp chemical scent from the widespread disinfection efforts. It mingles with the usual smells of the city, spices from shuttered market stalls, sweat from the day's labor, and the saline tang of the Arabian sea breeze. Underneath it all lurks the sour-sweet odor of sickness that the doctor has come to know too well. He steps around a group of British soldiers, standing guard at a street corner. They nod curtly as he passes. They recognize him as part of the official plague committee staff. Since the epidemic broke out last year, the colonial government has taken harsh steps. Entire neighborhoods searched, sick people forcibly moved to segregation camps, contacts isolated, and houses disinfected or even burned. The doctor feels the weight of these measures. As an Indian doctor working under British orders, he walks a delicate line between enforcing public health and respecting his people's fears and rights. Right now he is headed to one of the notorious plague hospitals on the city outskirts to check on patients he admitted earlier. But he chooses to walk through the bazaar to observe conditions. Evening is when many laborers return from work, and indeed he sees a small stream of mill workers trudging home, towels around necks, faces wary. Many wear amulets or tulsi holy basil, leaves tucked behind their ears as talismans. Most give the doctor a wide berth, they know his plague-fighting attire. A few offer quick respectful nods, equal parts gratitude and fear. He is a familiar figure here, often seen during search operations for the sick. He hears a clang. A municipal water cart is coming through to wash down the streets. Women with saris hitched up scurry to collect water in brass pots for the night before it's tainted. The doctor steps aside as the cart sloshes by, spraying water mixed with disinfectant. The ground becomes muddy around his boots. Overhead, the sky is a vivid hue of purple and red, monsoon clouds gathering on the horizon. The air feels thick, it might rain later. Continuing on, he crosses a small footbridge over a fetid Nola drainage canal. He glances down to see rats scuttling among the garbage. A grim frown crosses his face. He knows now that these rats are carriers of the plague, or at least he strongly suspects it from the latest scientific reports. Just 3 years ago, in 1890, scientists in Hong Kong, Yujirsen and Kitasato, identified a bacillus as the cause of plague, and soon after the role of fleas and rats was uncovered by researchers like Paul Simond. The doctor himself has read those findings forwarded by the Pasteur Institute, but convincing local authorities and people has been another challenge. Still, he participates eagerly in the rat-killing campaigns. One of his side duties is advising the squads of workers laying rat traps and distributing poison. He recalls with slight amusement an incident where some tired men entertained themselves by throwing live rats into a bonfire, a grim pastime born of exhaustion. On the other side of the Nola, he reaches the compound of the Maratha Plague Hospital. It's a low one-story building that was once a school, now converted to isolate the ill. Around it, a high fence and guards at the gate emphasize that those inside are not free to leave. A measure that has caused resentment but is deemed necessary by the plague committee. The doctor shows his badge and is admitted. Inside the courtyard, lanterns are being lit as dusk settles. The hospital is fairly quiet. A few charpoys woven cots lie under a veranda, each occupied by a patient. Attendants in simple white attire move about, checking forehead cloths and ladling rice gruel into bowls. The doctor is greeted by the matron, a Parsi nurse with whom he has worked closely. Together they do rounds. He stops at a cot where an older man lies breathing shallowly. This patient was brought in earlier today, with high fever and a large bubo in his armpit. Now the man is semi-conscious. The doctor touches his pulse, thready. He had administered a dose of Hafkine's plague serum, a new experimental anti-serum developed just months ago by Dr. Waldemar Hafkine. But it may have been too late. The patient's eyes flutter. He mutters something about his wife. The doctor squeezes the man's hand gently, though his own heart knows the man likely will not see morning. Next they come to a cot where a teenage boy sits up weakly. This boy is one of the rare survivors. His fever broke and his bubos drained after lancing. He smiles faintly at the doctor, who offers an encouraging nod. "You'll be going home soon, Beta son," the doctor says kindly. The boy's mother, allowed to visit standing a safe distance with a mask, clasps her hands in gratitude, eyes teary above her veil. One cot is empty. Its former occupant died an hour ago. The body has been removed to the back shed to await the evening's mass cremation. The doctor sighs and makes a note in the ledger, another death. But he tries to focus on the successes. 2 discharges scheduled tomorrow, a couple of patients stable. As he concludes rounds, the matron updates him. One of the patients is refusing further treatment, begging to go home for traditional remedies. The doctor frowns but understands. Many locals trust Ayurvedic or Unani healers more than these foreign methods. He confers softly with the matron about maybe letting the patient's family herbalist in to administer comfort if things worsen. They try to be flexible where possible to ease patients' minds. Stepping outside the ward, the doctor goes to a small shack on the compound, which serves as a disinfection station. He needs to clean himself before heading back into the city. Inside, a strong smell of carbolic soap and lime permeates. He washes his hands and face thoroughly in a basin of water mixed with phenol, scrubbing any exposed skin. Then he steps into a fumigation closet for a minute, where sulfur fumes lightly waft, in unpleasant but quick measure. He exchanges his soiled cotton mask for a fresh one from his satchel, and wipes his boots with a cloth soaked in mercury bichloride solution. These routines have become second nature, though they sometimes make his skin itch and eyes water. Night has fallen by the time he exits the hospital. The compound's kerosene lanterns cast a flickering glow. A chorus of cicadas and distant bullock cart wheels is heard in the night. The city is quieter in plague times after dark. Even the usual festivals and street dances have ceased. Only the calls of watchmen enforcing quarantines occasionally echo. The doctor decides to pay a quick visit to a nearby plague camp before heading home. This camp is basically a collection of tents, where people who had contact with plague victims are kept under observation. Walking a short distance, guided by memory and a small flashlight, he approaches the camp on the edge of an open maiden field. Many canvas tents are pitched in rows. At the entrance, a British officer and some sepoy guards check entrance. The doctor shows his credentials and is allowed in. Within he finds an atmosphere of restlessness. Groups of people sit outside tents in the warm night, cooking simple meals over charcoal fires or fanning themselves. These are mostly the family members of those taken to hospitals. They themselves are healthy, for now, but not allowed to return to the city until the incubation period passes. Children cry sporadically, confused about why they're here. The doctor's heart aches seeing them. He does a quick check, making sure conditions are sanitary, latrines functional, and that camp inhabitants have basic needs met. The British authorities sometimes neglect comforts for these detainees, so he and a few other local volunteers bring fruit or chai when they can. He spots a familiar face, an elderly Muslim gentleman named Abdul, whose wife is in the plague hospital. The doctor goes to him and asks softly in Marathi how his wife fares. The old man shakes his head, eyes downcast. "No news tonight, Dr. Sahib." The doctor squeezes his shoulder. He then notices the old man's tent seems stuffy. Immediately, the doctor lifts a flap to let more air in. "We must keep the air moving, Kaka, uncle," he says gently. The old man mustered a grateful half-smile. Walking through the camp, the doctor observes a few traditional healers moving among the tents as well. Perhaps relatives administering herbal teas. He doesn't interfere. If it comforts people, he tacitly allows it, as long as it's not harmful. One Hakim Unani practitioner nods to him respectfully while carrying a bundle of neem leaves, likely to fumigate tents naturally. The modern doctor and the herbalist share a silent mutual respect. Both are trying their best in complementary ways. By the time he leaves the camp, it's fully night. The tropical sky is overcast, no stars visible, only a halo around the moon from humidity. The doctor is bone-tired, but he makes a final stop on his way home. The Half-Keen Laboratory, a small makeshift lab, set up in an old government building, where research on plague vaccine and experiments are ongoing. He peeks in, the lamp is still burning, and he finds Dr. Halfkeen himself, the Russian Jewish bacteriologist, bent over a microscope. "Working late, Professor?" the doctor asks quietly. Halfkeen looks up, adjusting his glasses. "Ah, doctor. Yes, just examining some cultures. How were things in the field today?" The two exchange notes, the doctor sharing observations of which measures seem to be reducing cases. He mentions that neighborhoods with aggressive rat catching show fewer new cases, supporting the rodent theory. Halfkeen shares that his latest vaccine trial among mill workers is showing promise in preventing illness. Some hundreds inoculated, fewer fell sick. They discuss plans for a larger immunization drive if possible. The lab is cluttered with glass flasks and petri dishes. A faint smell of broth and chemical reagents pervades. On a table sits a small brass cage with a couple of rats, experimental subjects. The doctor can't help but grimace at them, but he knows they are needed for science now. Halfkeen sees his glance. "Our true enemies," says the scientist, tapping the cage. "We catch them, yet thousands more hide." The doctor sighs, thinking of the alleys teeming with rats. "We'll get them, one by one if we must," he replies with determined quietness. After this brief intellectual respite, the doctor finally takes his leave. It's a short walk to his home, a modest bungalow he shares with his brother's family. When he arrives at the gate, he follows a routine, removing his shoes outside, washing his hands and feet at a basin by the door. His sister-in-law leaves antiseptic water for him each night. He even changes out of his day clothes in a little shed before entering, leaving the potentially contaminated garments in a bucket of phenol solution to soak overnight. Only then does he step inside, in fresh clothes, truly exhausted. His young niece peeps from behind a curtain. She's been waiting to ensure her uncle returns safe. He gives her a reassuring wave and a tired smile. In the dim lamplight, he sees his brother already asleep on a mat. The house is quiet. Everyone retires early these days, partly due to enforced curfews. The doctor quietly moves to his small desk by the window. Though weary, he forces himself to jot down some notes of the day in his diary. The number of new cases he encountered, conditions in the quarantine camp, an idea to propose to the committee, perhaps to allow family visits in a controlled manner to improve trust. As he writes, the night breeze stirs the curtains. The sounds of Bombay at night drift in, a distant train whistle from Victoria Terminus, carrying late travelers out of the city. The hoot of an owl perched on a banyan tree, and faintly, the chants from a temple, doing a special plague prayer ceremony through the night. Before turning in, he offers his own quiet prayer. He is a man of science, but also of faith and culture. Sitting cross-legged on his mat, he closes his eyes and lets the repetitive chant of a nearby mosque's late-night dua supplication lull him into contemplation. He prays for strength to continue this fight, for wisdom for the authorities, and for compassion to carry them through, repeating these intentions like a mantra. Lying down, he feels every muscle ache. The tropical heat is still present, but rain is due soon, which might cool it. He drapes a light cotton sheet over himself. Dogs bark in the distance, possibly at the prowling jackals that come into the city outskirts at night to scavenge. Remarkably, these usual sounds of life comfort him, a reminder that amidst plague, life's normal rhythms persist for some creatures. As he drifts to sleep, his mind wanders to the future. Perhaps, he muses silently, in a few years this plague will be a memory. With vaccines, better sanitation, and God's grace, Bombay might be free of it. He imagines a night where the city is bustling again, where families aren't torn apart by fear, where he can return fully to being a general physician, treating babies being born rather than people dying. That hopeful vision rocks him gently into slumber. Over the dark city, monsoon clouds gather, and soon a cooling rain begins to fall, pattering on the palm fronds and tiled roofs. The plague doctor sleeps, faintly hearing the lullaby of rain and distant prayers, preparing to rise with the sun tomorrow and face the challenges anew, with calm determination. Transition. The turn of the 20th century brought new knowledge and tools. As the rains wash over Bombay, we travel onward to another land and time, where the plague doctor's journey takes a new form, blending ancient duty with modern science. Night in Hong Kong, 1894. Night has fully fallen over the bustling colonial port of Hong Kong in the summer of 1894. The normally vibrant city is hushed under the pall of plague fear. In the Chinese quarter of Taipingshan, lantern light flickers in narrow lanes and shadows stretch long under the eaves of crowded tenements. A warm breeze drifts up from the harbor, carrying with it the smell of salt and coal smoke. And underneath, the fader of sickness that clings to these slopes. Through a winding alley paved with granite slabs, a figure moves with quiet purpose, a plague doctor of a different sort. He is a Chinese practitioner, a physician trained in both traditional medicine and recently learned Western methods. By day, he works alongside foreign doctors from the colonial government, translating and tending to the local sick at the Tunghua Hospital. By night, he walks these streets to check on neighbors and friends, a trusted familiar face amid the turmoil. He wears a simple outfit, a long gray scholar's robe, easier to wash and boil daily, and on his face a silk mask tied behind his ears, modeled after the advice of colleagues who read of recent discoveries about germs. In one hand, he carries a lantern, its soft glow illuminating signboards of shuttered shops, herbal pharmacies, tea houses as he passes. In his other hand, he holds a bamboo cane, partly to steady himself on steep slopes, partly to gently tap doors or ward off stray dogs. At his waist hangs a cloth satchel containing a few essentials, dried herbs, a small brass sprayer of carbolic acid, and paper amulets, inscribed with Taoist charms, gifts from thankful families who believe they protect him. Tonight, he navigates towards a particular cluster of houses. Earlier, a friend had come begging for help. A family in the area had hidden a sick relative to avoid the dreaded plague inspectors, who cart people off to the pest hospital ship Haigaya. Now the patient is critical. The plague doctor, or perhaps more aptly, just the doctor, as he is known in this community, has agreed to take a look discreetly. He approaches a small wooden door in a brick wall, 2 quick raps with his knuckles in a pre-arranged signal. The door opens immediately, and he slips inside. The room is dim, lit only by a single oil lamp with a smoking wick. The family, a middle-aged man and his wife, hover anxiously over a pallet where their adult daughter lies. The doctor's entrance is silent, but the parents greet him with a mix of relief and fear in their eyes. He sets down his lantern. With a gentle nod, he gestures for them to step back a bit. They know the drill. He has lectured the neighborhood that plague can spread person to person. The daughter on the pallet is feverish, cheeks flushed, breathing fast. A withered bubo protrudes on her neck. It looks like they tried lancing it with a hot needle themselves. The doctor smells the telltale odor of infection in the stuffy room, a blend of rancid sweet pus and the pungent aroma of burned incense. No doubt the family lit coils of incense, hoping to appease the plague gods. He reaches into his bag and pulls out a porcelain vial of bingpi and Borneol camphor mixed with peppermint oil. Dabbing a bit on a cloth, he waves it under the girl's nose to stimulate her. She groans softly, eyes half opening. The doctor quickly but calmly examines her. He touches her forehead burning hot, checks the bubo, already drained and less swollen, a good sign perhaps, and listens to her breathing. So far, no pneumonia. That means it's still bubonic plague, not the dreaded pneumonic form. From his satchel he produces a small packet of powder, an herbal fever remedy of his own design, containing huangqing, skullcap root, and chuangqing, lovage, among others, known to reduce heat in traditional medicine. He asks for hot water. The mother rushes to a little stove and brings a steaming kettle. The doctor mixes the powder into a cup, creating a bitter brown decoction. Supporting the girl's head, he carefully spoon-feeds the potion to her. She coughs but swallows some. He then cleans the lanced bubo site with a cloth soaked in carbolic solution from his brass sprayer, apologizing softly when the girl winces at the sting. He applies a poultice of ground jade stone and jasmine, a traditional poultice to draw out toxins and calm inflammation, over the wound. As he tends to her, he speaks in a low, soothing voice, a mix of Mandarin and Cantonese proverbs to comfort the parents, reminding them that Ren Ding Sheng Tian, man's resolve can overcome heaven's will. implying their efforts matter. He also quietly instructs them on critical measures. Boil all water, keep the patient isolated, and if her breathing worsens, or she coughs blood, to signal him immediately, and to wear masks themselves. The father offers to pay him with a few silver coins, or jade amulets. The doctor shakes his head. Later, later. Right now, use it to buy fresh fruits and nourishment for her recovery, he advises. In truth, he's operating half in official capacity. The Colonial Medical Board funds him a small salary, and half as a community volunteer. Before leaving, he places an amulet over the doorway, a strip of yellow paper, with calligraphy, invoking protection from the 5 plague gods. The family believes in these, and he respects that. Keep incense burning, and recite the Heart Sutra, he advises. Science and spirituality blend in his approach. He sees no harm in encouraging prayer, if it keeps people calm and compliant with care. Stepping back out into the lane, the doctor notices the night sky above the dense rooftops. Stars are visible, and the Big Dipper hangs low. In Chinese lore, the Big Dipper is associated with the deity of epidemics. He pauses to offer a brief bow in its direction out of cultural reverence, then moves on. He walks now toward an area that was heavily struck by plague weeks earlier. Many houses here stand empty, or have white crosses chalked on their doors signifying they were disinfected and vacated. The silence in these alleys is eerie, only the sound of a distant gong from the harbor, signaling 10 o'clock, and the scurrying of rats in the gutters accompany him. The doctor hates these rats. In his pocket he has some poisoned dough balls. He discreetly drops a few in a known rat hole near a grain store. Every little bit helps. Eventually, he arrives at the Tung Hua Hospital, where he has an evening meeting. This hospital, run by Chinese charitable societies, has lately been pressured by British officials to allow removal of plague patients to government facilities. A compromise was reached. Tung Hua treats Chinese patients with a combination of Chinese and Western medicine under supervision. The doctor is part of this bridging effort. He enters the hospital's side door and greets a colleague, a European doctor named Dr. Lawson, who has been working tirelessly on plague research. They gather in a small lamp-lit office to discuss the day's caseload. Dr. Lawson is frustrated. He mentions how earlier they tried a new serum from India on a patient without success. The Chinese doctor shares his observations from visiting homes. He notes that families who burned mugwort and kept rooms ventilated had fewer secondary infections. They chat about findings. Dr. Lawson brought his microscope slide of a lymph sample. They both peer at it. The Chinese doctor can make out the tiny ovoid bacilli clustering, so small, yet causing so much calamity. He murmurs in awe. He mentions that local rumor calls it Yi He Chong, the pestilence bug. They then plan tomorrow's actions. More house inspections in Taiping Shan, with a mixed team of Chinese volunteers and British inspectors, setting up a whitewash station to spray slaked lime on walls. People protested, but it's being enforced after negotiations, and continuing free porridge kitchens to keep the populace nourished. That was the doctor's idea to reduce susceptibility. Conversation moves to the cultural friction, how to convince people to report illness sooner rather than hide it. They consider leveraging community leaders and temple priests to spread messages that cooperating with doctors is not dishonoring ancestors. Some fear that dying away from home means spirits wander. The Chinese doctor even suggests performing Buddhist rites at the hospitals for the dead to alleviate that fear. Dr. Lawson enthusiastically agrees to support that culturally sensitive approach. After this productive albeit somber meeting, the doctor takes his leave. It's nearing midnight. He's tired but has one more place to go, the boarding house where he and a few other plague workers sleep, not far from the hospital. He walks through the silent courtyard of the hospital. At the altar in the lobby, he pauses to light a joss stick and place it in the urn, paying respects to the departed patients of the day. The thin ribbon of smoke rises straight up in the still air. As he heads out the gate, a light rain begins to fall, summer drizzle from a passing cloud. He lifts his gaze to let a few drops cool his face. The lane homewards takes him past the Pak Tai Temple, a Taoist temple dedicated to the god of the northern heavens, who locals appeal to for plague relief. He sees dim candlelight inside and hears the soft chanting of priests who keep vigil through the night. He bows as he passes. Finally, the plague doctor reaches the boarding house, really just a flat above a tea shop that the hospital arranged for staff. Quietly, he removes his shoes and outer robe, hanging it where it can air out. He'll steam it with mugwort tomorrow. He washes his hands with warm water infused with vinegar and ginger, a personal nightly ritual. In the single room, 2 other doctors already rest on pallets, one softly snoring. He tiptoes to his own cot by the window. Before lying down, he takes out his journal, a small leather notebook. By lantern light, he records a few thoughts. The condition of Miss Wong, the girl he treated secretly, a note to check on the Chan family tomorrow, an idea to propose using garlic and onion poultices more. As he noticed some success with that folk remedy, his eyelids droop. He extinguishes the lantern. Through the open window, the sounds of Hong Kong harbor drift in the faint clang of a buoy, the lap of water against the docks, and somewhere a British military band playing a distant tune on a ship deck, curiously cheerful in the night. The doctor listens to that faint music, a waltz maybe, and finds it oddly comforting. It reminds him that beyond this quarter life continues in more normal fashion for some, and one day the gaiety will return here as well. He lies down on the thin mattress and pulls a light blanket over himself. In the darkness, he whispers a line of classical Chinese poetry to himself, one his old master used to recite about perseverance in dark times. Repeating it softly, his voice barely audible, he uses it like a lullaby to ease his mind from the images of suffering that normally would keep him awake. Eventually, the exhaustion of many nights takes over and his mind drifts. As he sleeps, the rains cleanse the narrow streets outside, washing away the day's sorrows. In his dreams, perhaps he sees a vision of Hong Kong healed, the temple bells ringing joyously, the markets vibrant again, children laughing in the courtyards. It is a calm vision that lets him rest through the humid night. Transition. The plague's reach spans continents and eras. From Hong Kong's lantern-lit lanes, we journey across the ocean to a new world, where a plague doctor carries the flame of knowledge into yet another long night, yet another long night, yet another long night, yet another long night. Late night in San Francisco, 1900. It is past midnight on a cool autumn night in October 1900, and San Francisco lies under a blanket of fog. In the infamous neighborhood of Chinatown, gas street lamps cast a faint glow that shimmers on wet cobblestones slick from the marine mist. The city is quiet, but beneath the silence is an undercurrent of tension, for the plague has crossed the ocean and made landfall here in the New World. A lone plague doctor makes his rounds in this sleeping city. He is a physician with the United States Marine Hospital Service detailed to San Francisco to combat the outbreak. Dressed in a somber black suit to blend in and not alarm residents at night, and a long overcoat, he is not immediately recognizable as a doctor. But the black leather medical bag he carries and the stethoscope peeking from his pocket hint at his profession. He also wears a simple white gauze mask tied around his face, having learned of its utility from reports of Dr. Wu Linte's work in China and his own experience at quarantine stations. A bowler hat is pulled low on his head, both against the damp cold and to shadow his face. He is cautious moving here. After an attempt on his life by a resentful resident earlier that month, many locals resent the plague health officers due to heavy-handed quarantines. He walks carefully through Ross Alley, footsteps echoing off shuttered wooden balconies overhead. The smells of Chinatown by day, aromatic roast duck, incense and spices, have faded, leaving only a hint of those mingled now with the odor of lime from recent disinfecting whitewash on the walls. His breath puffs visibly in the cold air. He pauses under a street lamp to consult a small notebook. He has an address to check, the backside of a Joss House temple where a suspicious death occurred earlier. Officially, the city's powers are downplaying plague, but he and a few colleagues know it's here and quietly continue surveillance. By discreet agreement with some Chinese community leaders, they alert him of any sudden deaths so he can investigate subtly, without causing panic or bringing in armed police. He locates the door, it's behind an ornate lattice gate. He gently pushes it open and steps into a tiny courtyard. A smoky lantern is lit inside where two men, elders of the temple, wait. They greet him, in cautious English. He responds with a few polite Cantonese phrases he's learned, "Nu ho, I am fine," to set a cordial tone. They lead him to a side room where the body of a man in his 30s lies on a board, covered respectfully with a red cloth. The plague doctor dons rubber gloves, modern equipment he carries, and lifts the cloth. With solemn efficiency and reverence, he examines the corpse, buboes in the groin and under the jaw, classic signs. He feels a mix of triumph for confirming plague presence and sadness, another life lost. The elders watch quietly. He takes a sterile swab from his bag and carefully collects a sample of fluid from one bubo. This he places into a stoppered vial. He will culture it tomorrow in the lab to further confirm Yersinia pestis. He then speaks softly, "I will ensure he is handled with care." The elders nod. They trust him more than the city's health officers who would burn or mass grave the body without ceremony. The doctor gives them a moment to perform a brief ritual. They burn paper money and gently ring a small bell over the body, a rite to guide the spirit. The plague doctor bows his head respectfully during this ritual, breathing slowly and deeply, the repetitive chant almost meditative. When they finish, he explains he must remove the body to prevent spread. The elders agree. They have a deal that he, not the hated police, will do it discreetly. He wraps the body in a clean white sheet he brought, tying it securely. Then, with surprising strength for his slender frame, he hoists the wrapped body onto a handcart that was tucked in the alley for this purpose. The elders thank him quietly, with a traditional phrase, "Dor jesa," many thanks. He assures them he will see that the man is given a proper burial after examination. They know he will at least try. Now the doctor slowly wheels the cart out a back route toward the city's morgue a few blocks away. The streets at this hour are almost empty. As he pushes the cart, fog swirls around his legs and around the still form shrouded on the cart, giving an eerie, almost ghostly aura. The doctor's mind wanders as he walks. He recalls how the state's governor denied plague's existence for months, hindering response. Only recently has the truth forced itself into the open, and still so many doubt or oppose their work. He has been maligned in newspapers as an alarmist, yet here he is, personally transporting a plague victim under cover of night. The repetitive squeak of the cart's wheels on pavement punctuates the quiet, a calming, almost hypnotic rhythm as he reflects on these ironies. Reaching the morgue, located in the basement of City Hall's annex, he uses his key to open the heavy door. Inside, the air is chilly. He is alone here at this hour. By the flicker of electric sconces, the city morgue has modern lighting. He transfers the body onto a cooling slab. He tags it under a pseudonym. Often they use pseudonyms to avoid the press getting wind and causing a scandal. He notes everything in the logbook: time, suspected cause, which he writes in Latin code, location found. The repetitiveness of paperwork is almost soothing. It grounds him in procedure and order amidst the uncertainty of the plague. He covers the body with a disinfectant-soaked sheet for now. As he scrubs his gloves and hands in a phenol solution at the sink, the biting chemical smell now so familiar it barely registers, his exhaustion hits. It's been a long day, from endless meetings with city officials to stealthy house calls like these. His motions slow, repeating the washing steps thoroughly, lather, scrub, rinse again, as if performing a ritual to wash away not just germs but the weight of responsibility he carries. Done at the morgue, the plague doctor steps back outside. The city is utterly still at near 2 a.m. The fog has thinned, giving a clearer view down Market Street all the way to the ferry building's clock tower, which shows the late hour. The occasional gas lamp hisses. He decides to walk a longer route back to his quarters, to clear his mind. He passes by Portsmouth Square, where by day Chinese elders play mahjong and children run about. Now it's empty, save for a stray cat perched on a bench. The repetitive ticking of his pocket watch and his measured footsteps accompany him as he mentally recounts, if he did everything. Yes, sample collected, log updated, family advised to burn bedding, tomorrow must send disinfection crew to that temple discreetly. Satisfied, he allows himself to relax slightly. At last, he reaches his lodging, a room in a boarding hotel on Nob Hill, commandeered by the Marine Hospital Service for doctors. Climbing the stairs quietly, he nods at a colleague coming down for his own shift, a brief exchange of all quiet. One new case is their passing dialogue, like a changing of guard. Repetitively, each night these exchanges happen at odd hours. In his room he lights a small lamp on the desk. He removes his damp overcoat and hangs it. The midnight dampness has made him shiver, so he quickly changes into a dry wool sweater. Sitting at the desk, he opens his personal journal separate from official logs. Here he writes more freely. The pen scratches softly. He notes the incident at the temple, his feelings about community cooperation, an observation that the plague here often hides in shadows due to denial, and how repetitive perseverance is their only way through. He writes a line from memory. The night is long that never finds the day. It's a quote from Macbeth he recalls. He finds writing these reflections helps him wind down, a sort of mental self-care ritual. He also jots down a repetitive affirmation he's kept. We will find the end of this. It's something he writes each night in one form or another, to embed hope in his weary mind. Finally, he closes the book, caps his pen, and extinguishes the lamp. The room is cold, so he lights the small gas heater briefly to warm it. He lies on the bed, not bothering to fully undress aside from shoes and tie. He might be called out again any time. Better to be ready. Pulling an old quilt over himself, he listens to the faint ding of a boat far out in the bay, and the repetitive morning two-tone horn of a lighthouse at Fort Point sounding through the fog. These sounds, rhythmic and steady, lull him. They are like nature's own mantra, assuring him that though the city is under siege by plague, life's heartbeat still pulses steadily. As he drifts off, he finds himself mentally reciting something familiar. The Lord's Prayer comes unbidden, likely from his childhood memory. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, he murmurs silently, matching the rhythm to the distant buoy bell. Each phrase, a slow exhale. It calms him deeply. By the time he reaches deliver us from evil, he is half asleep, the words blending into a final exhalation of the day's burden. He falls asleep to the muffled hum of the city, a streetcar's bell in the distance, the clop of a lone horse-drawn carriage on cobbles, and the low rumble of the ocean beyond the Golden Gate. These repetitive urban lullabies reassure him that San Francisco still lives and will see a new dawn. Through calm vigilance and gentle persistence, the plague doctor's day and night finally comes to a close. In the darkness before dawn, he and all those who walked similar paths before him rest quietly, having done all they could in this cycle of the sun.